You know, ladies and gentlemen, back in the day we had something called buzz movies. Now, in the early 70s, you would go by the poster or word of mouth or talk about a possible censorship of the movie to basically see if this would be worth your, 175 to 350 to go see a movie, especially at a drive-in. Now, with this movie, my dad told me, and he found out from the source, that the local Catholic priests in our diocese up home, Nash Creek, Jekyll area, warned the congregation not to go see the movie. Allegedly, the Protestant minister also said, because don't go see it, this is promoting transgenderism or sex change or incest sex between a brother and a sister. Well, this had nothing to do with any of their categories, but it was a Hammer movie. The title alone should give it away. Yes, John Walco has requested, our good friend of the channel, probably the best movie you've never seen, Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde. Now, this is a 71 Hammer British horror film directed by Roy Ward Baker, based on the 1886 novella Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. The film was made by the British studio Hammer and was their third adaptation of the story after The Ugly Duckling and The Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll. The film is notable for showing Jekyll transform into a female Hyde. It also incorporates into the plot aspects of the historical Jack the Ripper and Burke and Hare cases. The title characters were played by the film stars Ralph Bates and Martin Beswick, and according to John, Martin was offered to be nude in the movie and she gracefully declined. Now, Dr. Henry Jekyll in this movie dedicates his life to the curing of all known illnesses. However, his treacherous friend Professor Robertson remarks that Jekyll's experiments take so long to actually be discovered, he will no doubt be dead by the time he's able to achieve anything. Haunted by this, he abandons his studies and obsessively begins searching for an elixir of life, using, of all things, female hormones taken from fresh cadavers, supplied by murderers Burke and Hare, reasoning that these hormones would help him to extend his life, since women traditionally live longer than men and have stronger systems. In the apartment above, Jekyll has a family, an elderly mother, her daughter Susan Spencer, and Susan's brother Howard. Above Jekyll lives a family. Susan is attracted to Jekyll and he returns her affections, but he is too obsessed with his work to make advances. Mixing the female hormones into a serum and drinking it not only has the effect of changing Jekyll's character for the worse, but also of changing his sex, transforming into a beautiful but evil woman who is physically equal, like in height and size, to Dr. Jekyll. Susan eventually becomes jealous when she discovers this mysterious woman, but she confronts Jekyll to explain the sudden appearance of his female alter ego. He calls her Mrs. Edwina Hyde, saying she's his widowed sister who has come to live with him. Howard, on the other hand, develops a lust for Mrs. Hyde. Now, Jekyll soon finds that his serum requires a regular supply of female hormones to maintain its effect, necessitating the killing of young girls. Burke and Hare supply his needs, but the criminal activities are uncovered. Burke is lynched by a mob and Hare blinded by lime. The doctor decides to take matters in his own hands and commits the murders himself, attributed to Jack the Ripper. Jekyll abhors this, but Mrs. Hyde relishes the killings as she begins to take control, even seducing and then-killing Professor Robertson when he attempts to question her about the murders. Now, this was a very, very interesting scene. Has to be seen to be believed. Now, as Mrs. Hyde grows more powerful, the two personalities begin to struggle for dominance. Jekyll eventually asks Susan to the opera. However, when he's getting dressed to go out, he unconsciously takes Mrs. Hyde's gown from the wardrobe instead of his own clothes, realizing that he no longer needs to drink the serum in order to transform. Susan is heartbroken when Jekyll fails to take her out to the opera, and she decides to go alone. However, the evil Mrs. Hyde decides that innocent, pure Susan's blood is just what she needs to finally take over Jekyll's body. She stalks Susan through the dark streets, but Jekyll will only just manage to thwart Mrs. Hyde's attempt to kill Susan. He then commits one last murder to find a way to stabilize the condition, but he's interrupted by police after a comment by Hare leads him to realize the similarity between Jekyll's early experiments on cadavers and the Ripper murders. As Jekyll tries to escape by climbing alongside the outside of a building, he transforms into Mrs. Hyde, who, lacking strength, falls to the ground, dying as a twisted amalgamation of both male and female. Now, there was some talk there was going to be a sequel, but it never came about, but it's just a hoot from start to finish. Now, Geraldson plays Professor Robinson, Louis Fiander as Howard Spencer, Susan Broderick as Susan Spencer, Dorothy Allison as Mrs. Spencer, Ivor Dean as William Burke, Tony Calvin as William Hare, Philip Madoc as Biker, Paul Winston-Jones as Sergeant Danvers, and Virginia Westerall as Betsy. Now, Time Out called this film enormous fun and an admirably successful attempt to ring new changes on an old theme. George R. Reese from DVD Drive-In gave the film a positive review, writing in the hands of most filmmakers of the time, such a gender-bending film theme would call for maximal exploitation tactics, but not with Hammer. Clements' script doesn't take itself too seriously, justly fuses the legend of Stevenson's titular character with Jack the Ripper and the grave robbers Burke and Hare. Rice commended the film's performances amid Baker's direction. Variety called the film highly imaginative. Further writing, director Ward Baker has set a good pace, built tension nicely, and played it straight so all it seems credible. He tops chills and gruesome murders with quite a lot of subtle fun, like dark comedy. Now, Bates and Beswick's strong, attractive personalities bear strange resemblance to each other, making the transition entirely believable. And I saw that. I do agree, although she has a little bit different nose that are what he called her spiritual brother. Now, John Higgins of Starburst magazine awarded the film 8 out of 10, praising Bestwick's performance and the script. Now, it did win Best Screenplay at the second French Fantastic Cinema Convention in 1973, as Brian Clemens won for his taught script. Now, the film was released on DVD in 2001 in a very, very mediocre Anchor Bay release as part of the Hammer collection. And has since been released on DVD in other territories. We eventually got his beautiful Blu-ray release in 2018, and the transfer is quite nice. Now, getting back what I was saying before, how it worked back in the day, ladies and gentlemen, you used to get your drive-in, not say pamphlets, but poster pamphlets, and the full poster was there, and one of the posters are featured here, like the transmutation from male into female. There was a lot of titulation that wasn't brought forward, because most Hammer films did not show boobs, did not show anything but cleavage. But the concept is this: if the female lives longer, would the female be more evil? So people were coming out of the movie saying, why were they making the woman evil? Why couldn't the man be evil? Couldn't a woman be Jekyll and the man be Hyde? And that was a big conversation. I thought there would be a different sequel, as you know, Miss Jekyll and Doctor, like female Doctor Hyde and Jekyll, right? Change around a little bit. I would like to see like something like a Russell Crowe and maybe a Jennifer Lawrence. Similar to that, it's a movie that hasn't been really looked at too much as a sequel or a remake. I would love to see that. It wouldn't take too much with the special effects. But the problem is with Hammer, it wasn't sexualized for a lot of people. So the international territories, it could have made much money if the sexuality was played up a little bit more. But at the time, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of Night Gallery had some episodes about ghouls. Ghouls were very popular in the comic books in the 60s and 70s. The Hammer pulp fiction, Psycho magazine, all that. It was quite an interesting time. But if you can find it on DVD, it's a hoot, ladies and gentlemen. And the Hammer actors do not overact, but they do not underact. They're just right. But ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot going on here. You got to know a lot about serial killers to get the subtlety, what the grave robbers and Dr. Ripper, because the late 1800s, early 1900s in Britain were a rough time. A lot of shit going on. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, John. If you like what you're doing here, give us a like, comment, subscribe, or share. And don't forget, Hammer Films, man. If you want to have a good weekend, rent 2 or 3, and just sit down with a box of popcorn and mess up my head. There's a lot of stuff going on, because it seems like a big movie, but it's not. So it's your typical $5 to $10 million movie you would see now. Thanks for listening. Bye.